Welcome to the June meeting of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. I appreciate you all being here. What we're going to do is I've called the meeting to order. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I'll explain the little deviation from what we usually do during our meeting. So let's go ahead. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Could we just call roll? Is that possible? We don't have that on our agenda, but I think it'd be good for everyone to hear who's here and for the record.
Commissioner Gitlin.
Here.
Commissioner McClure.
Here.
Commissioner Gastineau.
Here.
Commissioner Glore.
Here.
And Chairman Hawley.
Yes, thank you. I'm here. And so what we're going to do, what we had been doing in the past is having a closed session at the end of the meeting. There's some reasons to have a quick closed session for a few minutes right now. So we anticipate coming back within 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll continue on with the regular meeting. So we'll go ahead and adjourn to closed session, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. So enjoy yourselves. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for your patience, and I'm sorry for that deviation, but it was important for the timing of some of the matters that we have to deal with later on tonight. Let's see.
Did I take yours?
Yes. Oh, there we go. Commissioners
Chair.
are stealing agendas now.
I'd just like
Talk-
to report for the record that
Yes.
there is nothing to report this afternoon from closed session.
Very good, thank you. So, we've done closed session. It's now time for public comments. Any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter on or off the agenda. After receiving recognition from myself, please give your name and address for the record. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Is there any public comment this afternoon? Yes. Oh, yeah, come on up. Thank you for catching that.
Okay, this is pretty brief. I'm Elizabeth Henry, and I reside in the county. And just a little bit of history, which you've probably heard, but most of you, but some not. I attended my first Solid Waste Authority Board meeting in May 2013 after reading an article in the Triplicate about the efforts to disband the authority. I was interested because I served 8 years on the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors and was a founding member of their Solid Waste JPA. Before coming to the meeting, I telephoned the director of the JPA in Mendocino County, who actually at that time had been there almost 20 years. He was there when I was, and asked what he knew about the Del Norte County's JPA. He told me that it had a statewide reputation as a leader in developing recycling programs and was widely respected for the work it was doing. He couldn't believe that anybody would want to gut it. That was 2 years ago, 2 wasted years. It's sadly ironic that the board is in the midst of having to put back into place the level of staffing that existed until the end of July 2013. For those who tout the R3 consultants report, that is option 1. It's right in the R3 report, but it's been ignored by the 2014 board majority, who only wanted to talk about option 2, which cut staffing. The 22-month interval has seen lost revenues, a loss of trust by the public, and a staff under severe stress and unable to complete tasks. It'll take a while to catch up and rebuild the programs that have been affected by very bad decisions by the board majority in 2013 and 2014. The grand jury has investigated the operations of the Solid Waste Authority and has released a comprehensive report of what they found. The backlash has already started with accusations of impropriety and bias by the jurors. That's what people do and say when they don't have the truth on their side or the facts. When those accusations are made, I'd ask the accuser, how many solid waste meetings have you attended? What reports and documents have you read? Those of us who have invested many months doing just that have witnessed many of the things the grand jury has pointed out. We know they're true. I hope the response you make to the report will do more than just commend the jurors for their time and effort. I hope you will support the 24 findings in the report and will accept the 14 recommendations. I believe this community, which has expressed a strong support for expanding recycling programs as a means of reducing the solid waste stream, deserves that. Thank you.
Thank you. As we move along and we have perhaps additional public comment, I'd like to ask if we can have the clock rolling down when someone gets up there. Is that okay? Do you know how to do that?
It's right on our computer now.
Okay, it's just better for those that are giving the presentation. Okay, thank you. Is there any other public comment? Yes. Please state your name.
Eileen Cooper. Over the past year, previous year, this room was packed with citizens that asked to not break an organization that didn't need fixing. They asked that their tax dollars not be wasted on a study when they felt that the joint powers was okay. And they kept hearing over and over again that $20-something thousand was stolen time and time again, even after audits were set up and financial accounting was corrected, and it was found that it was errors in how we accounted money, and entries were not, made correctly for funds not collected. So, but yet we still heard from Mary Wilson, and I'll have to go back in the record, perhaps Roger Gitlin too, but she led countless times we had to hear her say money was stolen, and Mike Sullivan too. I remember those two kept saying that even after all this financial review was done, and we had to spend over $30,000 to chase after 4,000 of, probably checks that didn't come in. So this is so irresponsible. And then when the report came in, finally, their review of what we should do, it thought the JPA was, or joint powers was good. Then still, these same players kept saying that, well, we want to still privatize. We still want to do something different than this. And when I wanted to become part of the solid waste task force, and I attended several meetings to see what it was like, Mary Wilson, she's still on that, and what she wanted to do to that task force is right away. The first meeting I went to, after all this, she said, "Well, there's money stolen, and I want to focus in on expenses." Well, I'm sorry. The task force is about public education. It's about improving recycling. So I'm very displeased with these players still being in place.
Thank you, Elaine. Other public comment?
Catherine Murray. I'm a member, a resident of the city and the county. I was very pleased with the grand jury report on the Solid Waste Authority, and I don't know what will happen with the recommendations, but I encourage this board to speak with the Board of Supervisors and ask that Mr. Gitlin be removed, and following the grand jury recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments? Okay, seeing no other public comments, then we'll move back to our agenda. The next matter on the agenda is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda this afternoon, we have approval of the minutes from the regular session from Tuesday, May 19th, 2015. 4th of July fee waiver request from the Chamber of Commerce with respect to authority criteria and policy for authority allocated bin pulls, and approval of a budget transfer in the amount of $85,450. So I'll ask the commissioners, do you have any technical discussions? Any questions of Ted? Okay. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Public comment on the consent agenda. Okay. We'll bring it back to the board itself.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as a whole. Any further discussion? Okay, would you please poll the vote?
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau,
Yes.
Commissioner Glore,
Yes.
Commissioner Gitlin,
Yes.
Chairman Hawley.
Yes. Okay, thank you. The consent agenda has been approved. Under discussion and action items, number 3 is landfill closure. 3.1 is status report regarding the authority's ongoing appeal of waste discharge requirements fee from the State Water Resources Control Board. Ted?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Hawley. We have discussed at previous meetings how our Crescent City landfill has the 1A threat complexity rating, which means that it receives the maximum fees for waste discharge requirements fees in the state. Annually, currently this is a bill for $7,781. The board has approved payment of the amount that would be appropriate for a 2A complexity rating, but that leaves approximately $40,000 still unpaid. This letter is to communicate to the State Water Resources Control Board the status of our appeal and what we are currently doing, because we simply can't continue to receive late notices and fees due without some kind of response. So recommendation is that we send this off and that I follow up shortly thereafter with a phone call to the State Water Resources Board to try to ascertain a little bit more status about this. And we have quite a CC list of folks that we would also like to send copies of this letter to, including the Regional Water Quality Control Board staff and executive director, our elected representatives Jim Wood and Mike McGuire, as well as, of course, the members of the county, and the Environmental Services Joint Powers Authority of the Regional Council of Rural Counties, because Larry Sweetser and the ESJPA has been actively engaged in this discussion. As you can see from the details of the letter, essentially what we're asking for is we're asking that these fees, when they're assessed, there be some consideration for either facility size or population. This is something that's allowed under other categories of waste discharge requirements fees, but not somehow not for landfills. So we're asking for that additional flexibility. The Regional Water Quality Control Board staff has said that they support this, but at this point they do not have that power or that flexibility.
Okay, thank you. Any technical questions for Mr. Ward? Any public comment on this matter? Okay, seeing none, we'll come back to the board. Ted, are you wanting staff direction? Or?
I have direction to continue this appeal. This is the status of this appeal. If there's no objection to the letter as it's been presented to you, I'll send that off.
Very good. Okay. Mr. Gitlin?
Mr. Ward, I continue to have difficulty in understanding of this complexity level of 1A, why it stayed this long so long, and why we can't get proper monitoring of this and lower the status and save the folks money. Why is this continually at this 1A level? And if it stays at this level under our supervision, shouldn't we begin to think about exporting this service out to someone who can get this level lower and save our taxpayers and our ratepayers some money?
The threat and complexity rating is a qualitative rating, so it's established by the Regional Water Quality Control Board staff. And like I said, we have been appealing this rating since December of 2010. So at this point in time, but the staff is in control of that. It's not ours to control. So we can try to provide them additional information and detail, and in fact, that's the next item, item 3.2, is an RFP to get some additional engineering analysis to try to bolster our appeal.
Tell me about the history, because at some point we were on the road to lowering the status, and then the wheels came off the bus. This is going back some time ago.
We drilled a couple of additional investigation wells, and we did an engineering analysis, and we have preliminary data from those wells, and I'm hoping that some of that data may bolster our arguments for the appeal. But as you know, we've been somewhat short-staffed, and I've been working on that as best I can, but I also had an agenda to put out and a budget to get together, and there's only so many hours in the day, and there is no one else on the Solid Waste Authority staff with technical expertise on landfill issues.
Oh, how about privately?
What?
How about privately?
You have on your agenda under item 3.2 a request for proposals.
Okay, well, we'll take it up then.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Ward? So I guess we have consensus that you just continue on. We want to see this changed, and it's important, and it would save a significant amount of money. And of course, the risk that we have is that we could incur charges as a result of that non-payment. We all go in with our eyes open that could occur. Okay, thank you. So a good segue then into 3.2, discussion and possible release of a request for proposal for water quality engineering analysis regarding the Crescent City landfill. Mr. Ward, again?
Yes, so this is a request for proposals specifically to do engineering analysis at the Crescent City landfill to bolster our appeal for the waste discharge requirements fees and the associated threat and complexity rating. So there are two main tasks in this scope of work, and they are to prepare a comprehensive appeal to the waste discharge requirement fees and the associated threat and complexity rating, and to propose text for updating and revising the Regional Water Quality Control Board monitoring and reporting program for the Crescent City landfill. So this is another potential avenue for cost savings in that when we discuss with the Regional Water Quality Control Board our various monitoring programs, there's always a chance that we might be able to scale back some of those that have shown that there isn't a significant concern. That does not mean that they won't add additional things to be monitored. So I cannot assure you that we will have a net reduction in our monitoring costs, only that this will be a topic of discussion. But we do need additional engineering help to do this analysis, and so while this request for proposals is nearly complete, it's not quite ready to mail out in that, for instance, I have a 12-page list of potential contractors, including many in Southern California. I need to wade through that to make sure that we are both spreading this far and wide, but recognizing that the folks who are most likely to do this work are already on the North Coast.
Okay, thank you. Questions of Mr. Ward?
I guess one of my questions would be, is there enough time? It's, right now, the proposals are due July 13th. If this is delayed by a little bit to finish it up, is that enough time for people to put together a proposal?
It's actually a fairly simple scope of work in the grand scheme of things. So I'm hoping, yes, for folks who are familiar with this kind of water quality engineering work, I'm hoping that they'll be able to respond fairly quickly.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Yes.
Yes, Ted, I have some concern that we're continuing to go back to the same well, if you will, and we're trying to get this threat level down from a 108 to a lower area. And I know Recology is here, and I know that they have had experience in lowering the status of these wells, of these tap landfills. And why are we not looking outside of the box, so to speak, to see if there is experience in the private sector in Sacramento to get this threat level lower? Why are we not looking that way?
Well, we are looking to hire experts, water quality engineering experts.
Well, we have a partner who's an expert.
I question that assessment.
Okay.
Well, then if Recology
Recology in the broader scheme of things may have they may have divisions that deal with landfills, but those are not the divisions that are working here.
So are you saying that Recology does not monitor landfills? I know we have.
I'm saying that at this point in time, that is not part of the services that Recology provides to this agency, and we're looking for specific engineering analysis related to the Crescent City landfill, not a generic theoretical landfill, but this specific facility.
We have an RFP in front of us.
Yes.
And I'm looking for options because the same argument has been going on for a long time.
If you would like me to send this to Recology, I'd be happy to do that.
They have the ability to
They
respond.
have the ability to apply if they want.
I mean, this is what this RFP is all about, request for proposal.
Absolutely.
And what we're looking at is the bottom line is we want to lower our costs. Isn't this what this conversation is about?
I can't offer assurance that by pursuing these engineering studies and providing additional information that our permit fees will actually be lowered. It is an appeal process, and it's an appeal to the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and it is going to remain their decision.
Maybe I could help.
Yes, Mrs. Court.
It's my understanding that the A1 threat that we received, which was done on several different fronts of why they were looking at landfills. And primarily because our landfill didn't have a liner, we hit the 1A threat. However, just this week, I saw the Newport landfill, which puts two mountains, literally two mountains together, because there's so much fill into their, and I knew that their threat would be a lot bigger than ours, since they have industry and they have lots of pollutants that go into the system that we don't have. And so to do the analysis of the engineering report will be a quiver in our system to be able to say, look, here's the real threat. We have to do the analysis, because the Regional Water Quality Control Board does not have the authority to reassign the threat based on anything but the guidelines that they were given. And we are going to try to drill down on those guidelines and actually ask for an analysis based on the outcomes of an engineering report that will then go to the State Water Board, who hopefully will then give the authority to the Regional Water Board that they can make exceptions. And we're even going to attempt to tie not only the analysis from the engineers, but we're going to attempt to try to tie our size as a rural community and also our socioeconomic background in order to reach to the State Board. But in order to reach to the State Board, we have to do that. It's kind of like appealing a parking ticket. You have to pay first before you can get into the court to appeal. Well, that's what we pretty much have to do, is that we need to pay first to get the analysis done so we can reach to the authority that can change it, and that's the State Water Board, not the Regional Water Board. So that's just a little FYI.
Thank you.
Well, and if I just may interject one more additional point with regard to parking tickets. The courts have reassessed that. You no longer have to do that. And secondly, quivers notwithstanding, I'm looking for results which will lower our threat level. I'm simply looking for a result, however we can realize it. And we've been at this highest threat level for as long as I've been on this board, with the hope that we can reduce it. I'm looking for results, Ted. So if we can get the lower, then we as a community and the public will benefit from that. That's all I'm looking for.
I share your concerns and your interests, and that is, I am continue to pursue this appeal. I wish I could offer you assurance that our threat and complexity rating would be lowered, but all we can do is try to bolster the appeal and make the strongest case we can.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. I don't know if have I gone out to the public yet? I don't think so. Any public comment on this? Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll go ahead and bring it back. Are there any more discussion on this at the board level? Okay, so it is before us. I guess you need authorization to release the RFP?
Yeah, approval of scope and authorization to release the RFP.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion?
I second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to approve the scope and release the RFP for a water quality engineering analysis considering the Crescent City landfill. Any other discussion? Okay, would you please poll the vote?
Commissioner Gastineau.
Yes.
Commissioner Glore.
Yes.
Commissioner Gitlin.
Yes.
Commissioner McClure. Yes. And Chairman Hawley.
Yes. Okay, thank you, and thank you for your work on this, Ted. Collections franchise. This is number 4. 4.1 is discussion regarding assessment and payment of finance charges by Recology Del Norte for late payments of disposal and franchise fees. Mr. Ward?
This is a report letting you all know that later in the agenda, when we discuss the treasurer and controller reports, we noticed when we first saw those reports that we had a drop in our cash balance. And that was a cue that we needed to look at what had happened. And what had happened was that Recology, in their instituting an electronic funds transfer system, unfortunately left bills unpaid, including ours. And so that was what was the cause of the drop in the cash. And we have, as we have discussed, a good tight contract that includes in there provisions for finance charges. And since their payment was late, and this was part of their overall structuring about how they're going to be paying bills moving forward, I did consult with the chair, and we both felt that it was important to offer this feedback to Recology to let them know If you're going to institute an electronic funds transfer system and you're late on payments, there is a cost associated with that. And so we did assess the financing charges, and they've already been paid. So there's $1,200 in additional revenue that we didn't expect, but we all care about making sure these payments are timely.
Thank you, and my thanks to Recology for following up on that contractual obligation. Appreciate it. So, any other questions or comments on this? Okay, thank you for the objectivity in pursuing those contracts. 4.2, status report regarding Recology's efforts to appoint or hire a general manager for Recology Del Norte.
And I'll ask Jeremy Herbert to speak to this issue briefly.
Mr. Herbert?
Afternoon, Jeremy Herber, Operations Manager for Recology. Just a quick update. Ed Farewell will continue to remain as the acting general manager until further notice. More or less, I will be your main contact for all matters locally. And we have also hired Mr. Randy Hanlon here, who is our new operations supervisor, who will also be stepping in to help us continue our contract obligations. And just to touch briefly on the payment thing, we have transferred pretty much a lot of stuff over to corporate. They are taking over a lot of our payments. Obviously, we haven't worked out all the bugs yet. So obviously, if this is being directed upon by numerous people to get this fixed promptly, and if we continue to be late, we'll be glad to support the board continually in their deficits to make sure we keep our obligations. So
Okay.
that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ted, do you have any other comments regarding?
No, we'll continue to watch that closely because we're all still in the transition for this new system. So we'll check our payments and timing.
Very good. Anything else on this matter? Okay, and I don't think public comment's necessary on this one. Okay, transfer station, 5.1, discussion and possible action regarding developing a program for commercial oil recycling at the Del Norte County Transfer Station.
So here we are approaching the end of the fiscal year, and we do have an annual oil grant, and so we've been a little behind in terms of our outreach efforts related to oil. However, because we are all aware that some time ago Recology stopped receiving commercial oil shipments, namely people who bring in 55-gallon drums to be pumped out, that service has stopped being available. And so looking at what our resources were and our potential, I worked closely with Thambro and Joel Wallen and worked with them to develop an equipment list so that we can offer that service at the Del Norte County Transfer Station. So I've ordered that equipment under this oil grant, and my hope is that in the next couple months we'll bring forth a change order and probably a rate ordinance for a new rate so that we can start providing those services at the Del Norte County Transfer Station. So I just wanted to let you all know that we had started purchasing that equipment and we're starting to roll down that path.
So the current user who brings in 5 gallons at a time is still acceptable? That's what you were talking?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
So now we're moving that up because we had this discussion before last year. And we're moving up to 55 as a matter of convenience for some people. This is what, there are very few, but there are some people who would prefer rather than go to Recology and have this, but to have this done at the transfer station at 55-gallon drums. Is that my understanding?
That's correct, and Recology does not currently offer this service.
Well done. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Ward? Is there any public comment on this particular one? No? Okay, so we'll bring it back. It says possible action. Is there any action that you require?
I don't think so.
Okay, very good. Thank you for the information. Next, we have the public hearing. We have a public hearing that was scheduled for 4. Thank you for all for staying for the public hearing. It's discussion and possible action regarding a public hearing and approval of the authority's budget for fiscal year 2015-2016. Mr. Ward.
So before you is the budget that has been reviewed separately by the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors and the Crescent City Council. And there have been some changes since the initial budget was drafted. With the initial budget, we had estimates for costs coming from the county. And as those estimates were revised, we had to go back and revise the budget. And so those costs did increase, and to address those increases, we adjusted personnel expenses downward, in that the board was moving in the direction of appointing myself as director, and so the previous payroll amounts included both myself as acting director and the vacant director position. And so with the action last month by the board, we were able to adjust the payroll so that it included the director position and the program manager position at the initial salary step of A, but also that under the best of circumstances, that person wouldn't be able to start until August, so we only included 10 months out of 12. So both of those things reduced our overall payroll estimates. I added summary lines, and just want to assure you all that this budget is balanced. However, we are still planning on doing the transfer station floor maintenance after we ascertain that we have adequate cash balance at the end of the fiscal year. Our fiscal year ends in July, but it really takes until September or October before all of that previous fiscal year issues are balanced out, and we actually know what our cash balance is, and we agree to that with the auditor. So that will be the process for those. Those additional expenses at that time would be added into the budget. So I anticipate that we will end up with a deficit budget, because this is an expense that's on the range of $200,000. And we pay annually approximately $98,000 as a funded depreciation. So this is about 2 years worth of funded depreciation, but it's a necessary maintenance activity. Also, after we do that, then we'll revisit with the county auditor, make sure that our depreciation schedule is adjusted accordingly, because not all things depreciate at the same rate. And once we do this kind of repair to the floor, then we clearly demonstrate it doesn't last as long as the rest of the building.
Thank you. And these changes were approved by the city council last night in this very spot. And so the city had a little discussion regarding these things too. So any questions of Mr. Ward? Questions of Mr. Ward? Mr. Gitlin?
2 questions. Ted, are we going to have the $180,000 to build this floor, the concrete floor? Are we going to have that?
We will determine our available cash balance working with the county auditor after the close of the fiscal year is finally complete in September or October.
So if we're anticipating a $200,000 deficit, the flooring is $180,000. Is that reflective? Is this $180,000 reflected in this projected deficit?
That $180,000 is not currently in this budget.
Mm-hmm. So my question is, again, it's a projection. Are we going to have the money?
Working with the county auditor, we determined that we would wait until September or October, and then working with them and Mr. Taylor, have everybody agree what our available cash balance is, and if we have an excess of $200,000, which I anticipate we will, then at that point we will add those expenses into the budget, and we would end up with a deficit budget.
I'm not sure that answers the question of whether we're going to have the $180,000. That would be my question. Now, in follow-up, and since we're not sure, are there any exigent circumstances with this flooring that will cause the interruption to the transfer station, with this flooring being in the current condition that it's in?
The current, the floor continues to work and serve its purpose, and when we would do the floor repair, I'm anticipating we will do it in sections, and so there will be some disruption at the transfer station, but we'll try to keep that to a minimum.
Okay, I've noticed, and I don't have my figures from last month's meeting, but the 2 main sources of revenue, you are projecting an increase of somewhere between 3% and 4% on your projections for both the franchise fees and authority service fees. I seem to remember that. I don't have the exact figures in front of me. But your largest revenue line on gate fees, which is payments to Hambros, you're only anticipating a 0.3% increase in their revenues. Is that my understanding based on the numbers you presented to us at last month's meeting?
You would be the best person to say what your understanding is, sir.
Well, I mean, our franchise fees are going up according to what your statement is.
both the revenues and the payments are based on projections of current receipts, adjusted by the changes to the rates that the board has already approved. But these are more recent estimates, and so while they are increases to the revenue projections, they are more recent and therefore hopefully more accurate.
Well, I'm only asking from a standpoint of arithmetic. If you're projecting franchise increases of 3%, and then why isn't Hambro also arithmetically going up in the same proportion? Why are you projecting their proceeds to be less than 1/3% when all the other costs, revenue increases, are estimated between 3 and 4%? This was what I brought up and asked you that at last month's meeting.
And it was part of the issue that Mr. Hemmingson had raised. I believe perhaps what you're referring to is the 20239, the transfer station operations line.
It was a 900 number. It was a 900 number.
Then we also have the revenues for 91003, which is the gate tipping fees. You'll see that we anticipate that we'll receive in the 91003 approximately 1.8 million, and the expenses to be paid to Hambros are slightly more than that. And the reason for that is that the authority does swallow some costs on behalf of the city and the county, such as the road department bringing in materials that are found along the side of the road, and then we will absorb those costs on behalf of the county. So, but we do pay Hambros to process those materials. So there's a slight additional amount that gets paid to Hambro out of the authority budget beyond what is received at the gate.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Ted, when we talk about the floor, and I agree, this is real important for us, an organization like ours, it's not unusual to, if we don't have the money, floor still has to be fixed. Because if we don't fix it, it becomes a larger expense. Is that
That's
right?
correct.
So is it, how would we wrestle with that later? I mean, would we go ahead and go out and get a loan? I mean, for capital expenditures,
to be clear,
that's what you have to do.
I fully anticipate that when the time comes, we will have the available cash balance. And just to offer you that same reassurance, as a quick glance, if you look at agenda item, here somewhere, there you go, 7.2, you'll see that our available cash balance is $558,539. So that's far in excess of the $200,000 we're anticipating.
Okay.
But because there are variations in the cash flow as time continues, just as a person has variations in their checking account balance, the county really wanted to make sure, the county auditor specifically wanted to make sure that we had the available cash balance before we incurred the expense. And I concur with that approach.
Okay. I can't help thinking about the city's obligations with the sewer and water systems and how generally the rates can't cover everything, including these capital expenditures that need to happen with large projects. And so sometimes you go into debt service and you climb out of debt service when it's a large organization that needs to spread those costs out over time. So anyway, we can deal with that if we have to. Okay. Other questions of Ted? Yes.
I just want to state that part of the reason that we have this is because we're a JPA, the state requires us to set aside the depreciation money. So the depreciation money is set aside, but it doesn't appear as an expense or an expenditure on the budget until it's time to pull out the deferred the money that has been set aside to do a maintenance project. So that's when you're going to see it, and that's when you're going to see it shift. And they're just making sure that the money has been put in there, because we've been putting over $90,000 a year for 10 years?
I think it's probably more like 4 to 6.
4 to 6, but so we've been putting away money to be able to make sure that the transfer station stays as nice as it is today, as it will be 15 years from now. So that, I think people should rest assured that they know that this is happening, and that kind of information doesn't show up on the budget. It'll end up showing up on a budget sheet, and a profit and loss. So I think that people sometimes get overwhelmed with the budget and think that that budget is the end-all and be-all of all the dollars that will pass through in a year, but it's not always the case.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any public comment on the budget? So, yes.
Is that?
There we go.
Okay. Just a brief comment. I'm really pleased to see the light items for professional services, treasurer, legal counsel all go down, and I guess that's partly a projection that we'll have a director and a program manager, so it looks like that money's going to be spent appropriately instead of being farmed out to contractors. So the other thing, and I just wanted to mention, because I was at the city council last night, and I was a little concerned. Councilmember Ania talked about putting the budget process back into what sounds to me like a 10-member board, you know, having the county approve the budget fully, every member of the county board of supervisors and the city. And Mr. Hawley, kind of, you didn't say no or yes, but you kind of said that might be a discussion item, and the mayor's here too. I would really like for you to squelch that. I just, from being at the Board of Supervisors meeting for these budget presentations, the discussion there and how wild it got in my eyes and how far off track it got, because people don't keep up with all the information, read, you know, everything. It's hard to just come in and do a budget when you haven't been there for the meetings all year. So I just think that would turn into the Wild West. Maybe not as much as the city, because there seemed to be a little more courteousness to the director and at the city council. But anyway, if you would keep that in mind, I really think you all have to trust each other. I mean, you appoint 2 people from each body, and if you don't trust those people, then change the appointments. The other thing is there is a final okay. If you really don't like the budget, then don't have your members, the 2 city members vote no, and the 2 county members vote no. Either one, and it can't pass. It needs one of each. So anyway, I do hope you'll squelch that idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I pointed that out, that 2 people from either organization could do that. So that's a little bit of a check and balance. Any other public comment on the budget? Okay, we'll bring this back to the commission. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, I would entertain a motion then.
I'll move that we approve the authority's budget for fiscal year 2015-2016.
Thank you. I'll second. Moved and seconded. Before we go forward, I may have been remiss. Martha, I think by nature of having the public comments, we opened up the public hearing, but I never closed the public hearing. Is that correct? So I think as a technical matter, I need to close the public hearing before we have a vote. Is that correct?
Yes, you can go ahead and close the public hearing at this time.
Okay. Consider the public hearing closed, and I think we can go forward with the motion and the second as mentioned already. So based upon that, then, would you please poll the vote?
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Glore?
Yes.
Commissioner Gitlin?
Yes.
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Chairman Hawley?
Yes. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Ward. It's been a long haul for you on this. Okay. 6.2, discussion and possible action regarding adoption of Resolution 2015-05, a resolution of the Governing Board of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority appointing Catherine Brewer as authority clerk. Mr. Ward, would you like to explain?
Yes, I'd like to recommend that that the board adopt this resolution appointing Catherine Brewer as authority clerk. Catherine has served previously as clerk to the Harbor Commission and serves also as the account clerk for the authority. This will be a cost savings measure to the agency, and it will be an enhancement to the office discussions following the meetings to make sure that we all have a correct understanding of the wills of the board.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ward or Ms. Brewer? Okay, seeing none, any public comment on this? Okay, we'll go ahead and bring this back to the board. It's
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 2015-05, a resolution to appoint Catherine Brewer as authority clerk. Any other discussion? Seeing none, would you please poll the vote again?
Commissioner Glore,
Aye.
Commissioner Gitlin? Yes. Commissioner McClure? Yes. Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Chairman Holly?
Yes. Thank you and congratulations. Okay. 6.2, let's see. Okay, 6.3, discussion and possible action regarding resolution 2015-06, a resolution of the governing board of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority authorizing submittal of a regional used oil payment program application as the regional lead agency, related authorizations and identification of regional participants, and submittal of related application for used oil recycling support funding for fiscal year 2015-16. Yes.
This is part of the official process by which we apply for our, what we call our used oil block grant. They call it a payment program, but essentially it's $15,000 so that we can do the very kinds of things like we just discussed of promoting commercial oil recycling. So staff recommend approval. It is a necessary step for us to apply for this grant, and so if this resolution is not adopted, we will not be applying for the grant, and that $15,000 would be an additional hole to the budget that I would have to adjust in future.
Okay, thank you. Questions of Mr. Ward? Okay, any public comment on this matter? Used oil. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring this back to the commission. Any further discussion? Okay. Again, I would entertain a motion for this.
I move that we approve the resolution of the Governing Board of Del Norte Solid Waste Management to authorize the submittal.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to authorize the submittal of the regional used oil payment program application. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Okay, very good. Would you please poll the vote again? Okay.
Commissioner Gitlin?
Yes.
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Glore?
Yes.
Chairman Holly?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're moving on to 6.4, discussion and possible action regarding adoption of resolution 2015-07, a resolution of the governing board of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority appointing Ted Ward director and approving the director's employment agreement. As we enter this particular matter, there's a couple of minor changes to the agreement I'd like to advise all of you about, because some of you may have actually read the agreement in the board packet. So I'd like to start out with that. So at this time, on page 4, number 1 regarding sick leave, the sick leave section reads, director will be entitled to sick leave with pay. Director will earn 1 day of sick leave with pay for each month of service from the date of employment accrued on a biweekly basis. The county auditor has advised me that that's not really the way the county does business, and if we did this for Ted, it would be different than all other county employees. So the new wording will read as follows. Director will be entitled to sick leave with pay. Director will earn 3.69 hours of sick leave per pay period from the date of employment, period. Okay? So the next thing that happens, though, is the following sentence. Director is hereby granted a bank of 10 sick days upon initial employment. That particular sentence is struck. Mr. Ward has been a long-term employee and has a good bank of sick leave already. So that is struck. Now, similar to that action, on number 9 on the next page regarding vacation, it refers to 240 hours per year of vacation being accrued. What we'd like it to read is 9.23 hours per pay period. It won't result in any real net loss for Mr. Ward. It just reflects the way the county does business. So I don't know if there's any questions about those changes, but with that, I guess I would open it up initially for board discussion, commissioner discussion. Any further discussion on, yes?
Well, I have some issues, and I'm going to bring it to the attention, Mr. Ward now, one on compensation. And the other one, termination with cause, without cause, excuse me. Let's go, first one. And I would object to this, the director's initial salary biweekly is, we're offering you a 15%. You're currently at level B, and you're going to jump to an E. You're going to skip C and D, and you're going to go right to an E. So I'm thinking it's a rather generous move, and in an agency that has projected deficit, I would propose that be stepped down, that you go in order from a B to a C, and you go in order, as are all county directors. That's what they do. We are skipping 2, and you're going right to level E, and in June of next year, you'll be at level F. So you're skipping, and that's a total of, well, that's what I'm reading here. I'm reading here, and I'll read it from you so you see. The director's initial salary will be $84,503, which is $32.50 biweekly, which is step E of the adjusted Del Norte Solid Waste Management Director's pay scale adopted by the authority February 11, 2014, hereby attached as Exhibit E and incorporated herein by this reference. On June 16th of 2016, Mr. Ward's salary will advance to step F unless the most recent personnel evaluation rates the director as unsatisfactory. Now, you're currently, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Ward, you're at a level B right now as the director. So we're skipping C and we're skipping D, and you're going to go to projected, you're going to go to E, and that's a 15% increase. I would object to that. That's number one. Number two, on the next page having to do with termination, termination without cause. The agreement may also be terminated without cause at any time by 4 affirmative votes of the governing board. Now, this changes the model of every other JPA in the county, whether it be the Airport Authority or the LTCO or any other JPA, which is a simple majority plus 1. So in the case of a 7-man board, you would need 4. So we're stepping that up a level for reasons that are not clear to me, that it will be, you will need 4 affirmative votes rather than the current model, which we have right now, as 3. So I would object to that on those 2 areas alone. Those are the 2 areas of concern.
Thank you, Mr. Gitlin. Other comments from the commission?
I just want to weigh in a little bit on the E placement and then to the F placement. Many times we will hire a director and put them somewhere along the line, A, B, C, D, different places. Most of the time the county places on B, and then the next year after the evaluation they go to C. And then the next year after the evaluation, they go to D, and the next year to E. Well, you've had 2 years at B. So we can do C and D. And that brings us to E. So I'm not losing any sleep over it. And then in relationship to the supermajority for termination without cause, I think that I have watched this board for the last 2+ years in an attempt to do headhunting, and I think that it keeps it very, very clean when our bylaws and our JPA agreement state that there has to be 1 positive vote from the city, 1 positive vote from the county, and then the 3rd vote normally, but it ends up needing 4 votes because you end up with if we keep the 4, we know that we keep the balance of 1 from the city and 1 from the county that's written into this contract. So I don't have any problem with it. I have been trying to peel off the contracts that we have, for instance, with Matt at the airport, but I can't find a copy of his personnel contract. I don't know what his benefits are. It appeared very similar in salary range. But that's as far as I was able to delve down because this question just came up today. But I know that there are some people that wish that we would have done a full-blown search and we would have gotten out there and, you know, put names out and waited for a while. I am ready to see Del Norte County Solid Waste Authority move to the next level. And in order to be able to do that, we have to get this stuff behind us. And I think you're going to do it, Ted. I think we're going to be able to do some reorgs. I think we're going to be able to do some partnerships with Recology, some partnerships with Hambros. We're going to be able to beef up our recycling stuff and, you know, go back again after state grants that bring money to our community as a rural community to be a pilot, so to speak. I mean, we wouldn't have the needle exchange or the battery exchange or the carpet exchange had it not been for the Product Stewardship Council at the state level, and we need to partner there, but we need to get beyond this. We need to get beyond this fight, because I'm done. I'm done people picking on employees. I'm done with people picking on public members. I am done with arguing when I can get online and I'm reading about great recycling projects, and I'm reading about stuff that's happening. I'm reading about kids in Santa Clara that are taking some of the waste product and building sculptures that are out by their landfill, and people, you know, they're doing things. And I'm here to do things. So I'm hoping that the board will approve this and we will move forward and we'll have a new director. And I'm hoping that the city and county leave us alone for a couple of years so we can show them that we definitely have the chutzpah to move this thing forward.
Thank you, Ms. McClure. Other comments? Okay, but as we go forward, I just want to, regardless how this turns out, I want to thank Commissioners Gastineau and Glore for the work you did on it, and of course our attorney and everything. So it was good that you were able to pump this out in the time between the two meetings. I appreciate your movement on that. So if there's no other discussion, we've already had we have not had public comment on this. Okay, I see. Let's have public comment. Maybe, just in my mind, we had public comment. No.
Let's have it.
Elizabeth Henry, county resident. I'm just so glad we're at this point. In fact, it's kind of almost unbelievable, you know. I hope I'm not dreaming, but, but I might be in the beginning of. I really want to support the 4 votes for termination. I think it may slow down something that sometimes is a knee-jerk reaction, like what happened with the former director. That happened without really having had a really thorough understanding of what happened with the money situation, because I believe that's the major thing that happened. And there was a lot of information that came after the fact. And when you have 4 votes, I think that might kind of slow down that process and give people time to think before they jump. The other thing, I'm glad that Commissioner McClure brought up about the salary. I think that's right on, that the acting director has spent a lot of time doing work in that category and shouldn't be asked to wait anymore to be a director at the appropriate pay level. So anyway, thank you so much for moving to this point, and I hope you'll soon be moving to a program manager too. So thanks.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Catherine Murray. I agree with the salary schedule issue. It makes sense because he has been actually he's been doing 2 jobs, so that makes sense too. And additionally, the 4-member vote for termination, because he is an at-will employee, would be a lot more fair process. Being an at-will employee would help him have a little bit of job security. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Yes, sir.
I'm John Parmentier, resident of the county, and regarding the salary, I don't think it makes any difference what he's currently making. What you were looking at is what he should be making. So the director should be making a certain amount. If it happens to be a 15% increase, it's a 15% increase. Secondly, he's been acting director for a long time. If anything, he should get retro pay for having acted in such a tremendous capacity. Thank you.
Okay. There was a small adjustment during that period. Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back here. And before we move forward, I just want to say, relative to the four-person action necessary for termination, the fact that we have alternates really confuses things. You could have actually one meeting where you have two alternates, and then suddenly everything is thrown up in the air. And so I think it will provide us the stability that I think that we need. We need stability at this point so we can move forward with a good foundation. So I'm in favor of this contract. So I would entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the resolution of the Governing Board of Del Norte Solid Waste Management appointing Ted Ward Director and approving the Director's employment agreement.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution regarding the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority appointing Ted Ward Director and approving the employment agreement. With the changes that I mentioned as we open this discussion up. Very good. Is that okay? Can we modify that?
Yes.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Gitlin.
I just want to bring up one point, and I hear Ms. Henry and I hear all the people in the audience. There is no one on this current administration who has an understanding of the fiscal responsibilities. We're back to the same level before, where, with all due respect to you, Ted, you do not have the experience in balance sheets, and you're learning as we go. I understand that. But this is a very dangerous situation, and I hear Mrs. Henry saying, let's go ahead and order a program director. We in this board, and you were part of this, Mr. Hawley, when you voted for a report for $33,000, you and I voted for this, to find someone with financial experience, so has a financial understanding. We're quite obviously not going in that direction. So I'm going to say, who is minding the store? Who understands the difference between a balance sheet and a balloon? It took us 3 opportunities to get this balance sheet correct so that we've approved it today. We cannot depend on the county auditor controller. And if it's you're worried, Mrs. Henry, about possibly the Mr. Taylor's hours going down, well, they understandably will be needing to go up because Ted needs assistance. And I'm very concerned about the fiscal understanding that Ted Laxey has plenty of letters in back of his name. None of them happen to be in financial areas. And I'm concerned about the future of this entity, that it remains solid and to remain fluid and remain understanding. That's why I can't support it, because we have no one to watch the cash register. So that's my statement.
Thank you, Mr. Gitlin. You know, since we're actually approving this as a whole, Ted comes with a lot of other skills, and we, in fairness, what we have is we have a county auditor, we have a county treasurer, we have our own treasurer, and we have an outside auditor. And it seems like with that kind of a team, we can utilize Ted's other skills to a point where the agency can still move forward in a safe and efficient manner. So that said, any other discussion here? Okay, I think we're at a place where we can pull the vote.
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Glore?
Yes.
Commissioner Gitlin?
No.
Chairman Hawley?
Yes, thank you. Congratulations. Okay, so your first action as the real director, we need your reports on 7.1, your director's report.
Okay, thank you. Moving forward, I would like these directors' reports to be considerably more brief than they have been historically. As you may recall, these reports have been in great detail because I felt a need to communicate to the board all of the activities that we regularly do, because there seemed to be a need for that understanding. So moving forward, I'd like to make them more focused in terms of the issues that are most deserving of the board's attention and concern. So letting you know about what's been going on, we did have a employee who accepted employment elsewhere, so Erica Semenoff is no longer an employee of the authority. We did work with the county, specifically Rick Lockstedt has been great help from the county engineering department, working with Alder Camp and the Fire Safe Council to do the annual vegetation control at the Crescent City landfill. I did initiate during this last month quarterly meetings with Recology, Hambro WSG, Julindra, and the County Code Enforcement Officer to discuss areas of common concern and to have an informal, regular meeting so that we make sure all of our lines of communication are open and that as issues of common concern come up, we have a way to address them. Each year, the authority receives financial statements from Recology Del Norte. I noticed this year's report was later than expected, so after requesting the report from Recology, they said it was one of the items Mr. Sparrow had received from Recology corporate office, but he had not forwarded a copy to the authority prior to his passing. I've begun reviewing this report and intend on addressing this at a future authority meeting. Let's see, the Del Norte County Fair, as part of the attachment to this report, they're requesting their annual $2,000 sponsorship. As the authority pays for this under our used oil block grant, and I include this to remind the board that the authority has a tradition of being a major fair sponsor and a supporter of the fair for the past 20 years. There is an attached letter also regarding advocacy related to expired marine flares. I've been working with Larry Sweetser on that, and the intent is to blast this letter out to our colleagues across the state so that we might have a larger voice emphasizing to the Department of Toxic Substances Control that this is a concern that really deserves their attention. So major activities in the coming month, sending out that RFP. I intend to start consultation with the chair regarding updating the tasks that are necessary to either update job descriptions and related actions regarding to getting us to a full staff. Sending out the expired marine flares letter. We are working with Sean Slater to upgrade the computer equipment, especially the scale computer and a few other computers in the office. And that was included in the budget transfer that you've already approved. So attached to the report there, you'll see our current staffing plan with the vacant program manager, the request for sponsorship, which since it's under the $5,000 approval limit that I have, I was just including that and plan on approving it if the board does not give direction otherwise. Sending out the marine flares letter. So that concludes the director's report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Yes.
So I was approached by a member of the public actually before my first meeting, and who asked me how I intended to be sort of available for members of the public to talk to me about issues. And the suggestion was given that I spend some time at the booth at the fair, and I wondered if that is appropriate to this board and if it's a possibility.
I would absolutely welcome the participation of any commissioner, and doubly so because as I anticipate that we will be in the throes of trying to hire and recruit at that point, I'm planning on attending a statewide conference that will pull me away. So we have all the more need for additional staff at the booth, and I'd be happy to sign you up.
I did it last year. It's interesting. Okay.
Ted, on the looking for the money that you are going to be, let me go see if I can find back, in relationship to our engineering report, have you by chance talked to the water bond people if there's money there, or to Coastal Conservancy?
No, on either front.
Okay.
I have not pursued that. What I did do as I was developing the scope, though, is I did forward a draft of that to the Regional Water Quality Control Board for their review, and we scaled it back some.
Oh, good. I think maybe if you gave one to Karen Gear.
Karen Gear?
For the Coastal Conservancy, and just with a cover letter saying, we're putting out this RFP, do you have any way to help us pay for it? Because it's going to help the wastewater, and we're going to have more answers to where the water is going in relationship to the lagoon and stuff.
I'll contact her and see what
Thanks.
I can.
Okay, thank you. The Treasurer Controller report?
Yes, Mr. Taylor is not here, but you see on item 7.2 our cash balance that we believe that we have is $558,000. That went down from last month, and that was associated with the delays in payments from Recology. So that's our current status, but we still have that $198,000 set aside for the transfer station payments.
Thank you. Questions there? Okay. Claims approved by the Director, May 2015.
Yes, this is a standard item. You can see, once again, the largest payment goes to Hambro WSG for their activities in May. There was also a payment I mentioned last meeting of $10,000 to Redwood Levitz Insurance Agency, and that covers us through May for that policy that's required as part of the iBank loan. So that was also an adjustment to the budget. We reduced that line item because we are paid up through May.
Okay, thank you.
And those were the big pieces.
Okay. Monthly cash and charge reports for 2015?
They're included. You can see that last month the authority revenues were about $85,300 of total revenues of $241,300. Our AR aging summary really demonstrates what a great job Lisa Babcock's doing in making sure that our account balances are not overaged. And all of the items that are listed under over 90 days have already been referred to collections.
Okay, very good. Still nothing from the board? Okay. Finally, the earned revenue comparisons between 13-14 and 14-15.
So the good news is that our revenues continue to be above projections, and that was also addressed within the budget transfer. But we are approximately $10,600 ahead of budget for the transfer station revenues coming to the authority, and we're about $6,500 behind in revenues from franchise fees. So they more or less balance each other out, and our revenue projections are very close to what we're actually receiving.
Wow, that's nice and close toward the end of the year. That's good. Any questions about that? Okay, very good. We're moving along on our agenda now, and we're at the adjournment. Is there anything else to come before us?
Just one housekeeping question. Because Recology has new management, is everything set up for 4th of July?
That was actually, that was on the consent agenda.
On the consent, so we're
Yes.
there, and you guys are okay with it?
Yep, we're all set.
All right. Thank you. Happy 4th.
Thank
To
you.
everyone
Happy
in
4th of
advance.
July.
We will adjourn until July 21st, when we'll do this again. So we'll see you all then. Thank you.
Thank you.